Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out once again to Bear Nation for tuning in to another episode of the Bear Necessities podcast. I am your host, Rob Napoli. The Bear Necessities is a podcast where we sit down with entrepreneurs, ecosystem partners, and innovation folks to talk about what it takes and means to launch, create, and scale business across the world. We talk about the journey and the challenges of being entrepreneur-minded and how that translates into your journey, giving you the tools and knowledge to overcome challenges that you may be facing in your life's journey. The Bear Necessities is part of the Rise Up Media family, and we thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get into the show. All right. Hey, everyone. We are back again for another episode of the Bear Necessities Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Rob Napoli. I want to wish you all a happy new year, a healthy new year, as we run into 2022 here. I'm excited for this episode because we're going to be talking about a lot of really cool topics on geniusness, leadership, mindset shifting. And it's my pleasure to have her on the show. She's somebody that I've been working with personally that has helped me. Anna Liebel is a mind shifter supporting male leaders in building sustainable business performance. As a result of working with Anna, leaders get out of firefighter mode, which is something that I myself have still working on, and they become more proactive leaders that they want to be and enjoying the ride while they go. So, Anna, I'm excited to kick off into this. Say hello to Bear Nation for me.
Hello, Bear Nation, and Happy New Year to you, Rob.
Thank you. And, it's interesting, I was on your podcast, and that's how we connected over the summer via LinkedIn outreach, right? We were starting to circle each other's networks and connected, and you saw some content, and we connected, and we set up a call, and then we got on the pod and did that whole thing, and we kind of were like, we should start working together a little bit. I needed some help in focus, right? Mm-hmm. And you needed some help in some of the business strategies, so we teamed up, and it's been a fun ride as we closed out 2021 and coming into 2022. Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to bring you on is I want to share this with Bear Nation in talking about what is mind shifting and why is it important, especially after 2020 and 2021 and all the things that, the changes that we've gone on in the world. So, long walk for a short drink of water. Let's talk a little bit about what you do and how we got here. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently in the business that you run, and what does it even mean to be a mind shifter?
Yeah, Rob, thanks so much for inviting me and being so open about that. You need the focus, right? Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of your peers in the Bear Nation can actually relate to that and feel the need in that. And this is the perfect time to really redefine how you can focus in the coming year, whether it's through your goals, New Year resolutions, or some word of the year, whatever it is that resonates best and can help your folks. So let's just dive into that. And talking about me and what mind shifting is. Mind shifting to me is a weird cocktail that a lot of people sound like. To a lot of people, it sounds a bit of witchery in a way. And you can maybe attest to that. Let's see what you say.
It's that combination. I like how you call it a cocktail. It's that kind of woo combination, but there's the woo side, but there's the actual execution side that I think makes this cocktail so unique. So I call it woo that woo side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I use those words myself. And the thing is that my background is in engineering and project management. I've been working in product development with global corporations and working with engineers. And my education is in computer science and project management. So I am a very analytical person myself. And I want to be super reasonable and so on. And I'm still learning to tap into the beautiful world of woo, so to say, or some people call it mambo jumbo, because I feel like I see a lot of people who actually thrive believing in and living on the woo-woo principles. And I'm like, why should I limit myself to only one world? Why can't I take the best out of both? And that is what I bring to my clients as well. My clients are also coming from the engineering, very analytical side of thinking or way of thinking. And they're super high performers, they're high achievers, they have no problems getting shit done. But there is something missing in that formula, right? And this is what I try to bring them with this woo-woo, but very, very, very gently and very, very, very gradually. And I still, just as you said, I love that you use the word execution, because it's not about like, just decide or believe, and then you just need to figure out how the hell do you do that. I actually guide you through that process with the analytical strategies and steps so that we actually get you to implement those things in real life.
Well, I mean, for me, that was one of the things is I'm an idea guy, and energy and ideas all the time. For me, what's always missing is practical execution. I can execute on a lot of things, sometimes a lot of the wrong things that I execute on from ideation. I think a lot of us are like that. And I really believe in the power of affirmations and intention, right? But setting intentions and when we think about that, it's great. I can want $1 million all day, every day, but I can't just want something. I have to go do something. And I think that's where, we talk about a cocktail, we talk about the woo-woo, is like, you can thrive by setting intentions, because when you set intentions, you follow through. Like, your actions are guided by intentions. And so many of us are like, oh, manifesting your destiny. It's like, yeah, you're manifesting, because when you manifest, whether you're consciously or subconsciously, are going to go after that, right? And I think too many people just like, well, I'm manifesting, I'm setting intentions, and nothing's coming back. It's because you're not fucking doing anything.
Or even worse, you're doing it against what you're trying to manifest. And that is super confusing for our brain and whatever you believe in, universe, God, or whatever, like when you say you want something and then you do something to get completely opposite effect or result. And it's like, what the hell is going on? So what do you actually want? Can you stop preventing me from giving that to you, please?
I think that's, that is part of where I felt personally that I was running into, is that I have very clear ideas of where I wanted to go, but a lot of the work that I was taking on doing kept me from doing the things, because I was chasing, well, these are paying clients, this is betting on myself and doing stuff that hasn't paid off yet, and it pulled me away. And I know that's something that, well, we're currently working through in my own development. But I agree, and I think more people need to demystify what it means to manifest, set intention, and execute. And that's really where I love this idea of mind shifting. And your journey to this, you talked about it, your packaging, background in engineering and whatnot, and you've worked for large global corporates. And now you're on this journey of being an entrepreneur and a coach. And I was, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, but not everyone should. What was it like taking the leap of faith that you were leaving large global corporates, comfort, stability, and taking on this new world of, I'm going to start my own business? What was that like for you? And how did you kind of face your own demons of kind of stepping away into this unknown of building a business? Because you also kind of stepped away to build a business right as the pandemic hit. So, you left a large, stable environment to start your own thing, and then in the midst of a pandemic. So walk me through a little bit of just what was that decision like for you? What was the impetus behind that? And how did it feel taking that leap of faith on yourself?
So that was not the first leap of faith or stepping into the unknown in my life. And I think that was partly what helped. So just for the context for the Bear Nation, I'm originally Ukrainian, and I moved to Sweden when I was 21 for doing my studies in international project management. And there I stayed and I worked in a corporate in the project management, and then met my husband there. Now we created a family. And when our daughter was 5 weeks old, we moved to Iceland because of his work. So when we moved, that was the thing that kind of triggered me changing jobs anyways. And I didn't have the rush for that because I was on maternity leave, and Scandinavia has a very generous maternity leave of over 1 year in total for both parents, not like in the US, right?
Yeah.
And I had enough time there. So of course, first it was focused completely on getting into the motherhood and getting to anyhow accustomed in the new country. And then when it was time to start thinking about the job, I thought of going back into corporate, but I thought of trying something else. I was like, okay, I can always come back to the project management. I have good track record there. No problem finding job in that area. But I'm so curious and actually have some other passions that I've been having as the volunteering experiences before. Why don't I try to get that as a job right now? And then I still have this plan B to lean on if it doesn't work out, if I don't like it there. So long story short, there was actually several conversations that just led me to deciding, okay, I'm actually ready right now to step into like starting my own instead of going and getting employed. I was talking to some people who are my role models in a completely different areas, like a fitness coach, whom I'm following and with whom I've been training for years. Having a conversation with her and seeing how she found her zone of genius and really how she has this energy that I totally love about her. That is because of really daring to step into her zone of genius and live from there, right? So there was those several conversations that led me to this decision, and then I actually started 2 businesses at the same time. So there was one registration number of the company, but then I tried to develop 2 directions, and one of them was in the travel industry.
Not the best when everything shut down.
Well, I started registered the company in October 19, and then I was trying to build the offerings and the websites of both businesses for several months. And then end of January 2020, I started taking my first paying clients as the Mindshifter. And there were quite some struggles with the registration of the travel or like licenses for the travel part of the business. So there was like second last drop of like having to pay $15,000 to Icelandic government. So basically putting a deposit onto their shelf as the security for the tourists who would be traveling with me. And I was like, okay, I do have this money, but do I want to invest it that way? It's not even an investment, really. So, and that was 2 days before the pandemic stuff started. So that was the last drop. And I was like, okay, I still believe in the idea, but I'll have to figure out how to do it later on. And now I've just doubled down on my mind shifting business. So that was the March 2020. And since then I've been working full time or sometimes more than that in the mind shifting part.
Yeah. I mean, when you start a business, especially one like yours, right? Services, when we think about products, its own challenges, right? But there's a little bit more things run and they work in the background. And when it's a service and it's based on your ability and your time, that's also makes it kind of a unique challenge. So building the business, being a mother, moving to a new country, as I listen, Ukraine, Sweden, Iceland, all amazing countries, but I mean, I guess you just like dark and cold places. Like, I don't know if you ever want to end up like warmth on a beach somewhere someday.
Well, we actually going to Portugal this year for 4 months, so over the summer. So I'm getting that part as well. Okay,
good. I was gonna say because my brother lives up in North Dakota. My mom lives in Wisconsin. My other brother lives in Minnesota. And as much as I love going up and seeing them, there's like parts, and of course I'm in New York, right? We get cold here, but it's like, yeah, I'm not going to necessarily go up to Fargo, North Dakota between Thanksgiving till about April. It's just a little too cold, a little too much snow. Anyways, coming back to your business, as you've been scaling this up and you're kind of going through this, you want to be working to help people find a zone of genius, as you said. What exactly does that mean? And I know you also host the Genius Leadership podcast, which is I was on, which is awesome, and we talked about that a little bit on the podcast. But what is this zone of genius, and what do you mean when you say that as a phrase?
So zone of genius, the term was coined by Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap, and he's written a lot of great books. Highly recommend him. I know that you ask about books. So that is the zone or those areas of your life or activities that really feel natural to you. They come natural to you. And if we go into practicalities of finding that zone or defining it for yourself, think about the questions like, where do I lose track of time, right? Like get in the flow, so to say. Or the question I like to ask that is less cliche maybe is, what do I look at people doing and think, how hard can that be? This thing that is the most natural thing for us, but like the others just don't get it sometimes.
Yeah.
Or something that people come to you because you're so good at that, right? And that is, again, this question is super good because sometimes you live out of your zone of genius and you actually go against this thing that is your zone of genius. And people keep coming to you with a piece of advice in that area or asking you to do that particular thing. And you're like, no. And that might be the sign that you live in your zone of excellence. What Mr. Hendricks is talking about is that you're good at the things that you do in this zone. You're excellent at them, but they're not natural to you. And way too many people in our society live in their zone of excellence. And that's why we're so miserable as a society, because we go against our nature.
So,
and I was part of that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was say this is super interesting because I talk about this, and I've talked about some podcasts before, is that there's like two camps of people: those who make their passion their business, and there's those that work in organizations to have freedom to live out passions in other ways. And I think so many times, our education system, we pick a major, we do these things, and we get good at something, but it's not. There's something that it's you're good at it and you do it, but it's not fulfilling. And like you just brought that up, and it's like so many of us do things that we may be good at, but we're miserable because we're not fulfilled. And what I'm hearing and feel that so many people are missing is fulfillment in what they do, or fulfillment in what they get out of what they do. Am I off base on that, or is that kind of in line with?
That's absolutely part of that, and that's what I also felt sometimes in my corporate job, where I felt like, yeah, I'm doing a good job. My managers are happy, my clients are happy, my colleagues are happy, but I don't feel like I'm contributing to making society a better place, and the world being a better place for us to live in. And that's the thing, like it's so individual. So the job that I was doing, someone else might find the best purpose of their life in that. So there is no like wrong job and like right job. There is your job and there is not your job, right? And just what you said, that a lot of people feel this like lack of fulfillment or lack of purpose. But a lot of people are actually scared of taking a step, like, scrapping everything that they've done to start following their passion, following their purpose, getting to the zone of genius. And I always try to emphasize that you're never scrapping the rest. Like whatever experiences you have, they make you you.
Yeah.
And you need to learn to be grateful for those experiences and have trust in that you will always find a way to use that in your zone of genius.
I love
so it's all valuable experience.
It is. And it's scary to step into your zone of genius, right? It's scary to potentially leave comfort and consistency to step into that zone of genius. And we're never really scrapping, and there's never a right time. There's never going to be enough money, the timing right, like to do those things. You have to, when you feel it, you got to chase it and go lean into it, right? But everything we do leads us to the next thing, and everything is built upon. And when people say like scrapping this, scrapping that, it's like I agree with you. It's like no, like those experiences told you more about who you are as a person today and maybe what you don't want to do tomorrow than anything ever. Like I worked in recruitment for almost 10 years, and I've been in recruitment like 4 different times in my career because I love recruiting, and I used to be fulfilled by helping people get better job opportunities, all these things. But there was a moment when I realized that it was no longer fulfilling, and it was hard. Like that's when, for the first time in my life, I got fired. Is like I didn't bring that passion and fire to the job every day, and that set me on this like 2.5-year journey to where I'm at today with Rise of Coaching and Happy Group. And all these things I'm still figuring out. But, that sense of I was doing something I was really good at that was once fulfilling, but was no longer fulfilling. And I was good at it, but I didn't want to be doing it day in and day out. And so I know what it was like to work against the impact that I wanted to create. Like, what impact do I want to have? And that leads into this question is, as I introduced you in and, put this on your LinkedIn, and, I've talked about this a little bit, but as a mind shifter, you're helping male leaders. What is it, why is it, these very targeted ICP and really helping those male leaders? Is there a reason? Was it like that's just what was more like happening naturally? Was there a conscious decision on, I think that my biggest impact, because we just talked about the impact that you want to create. So would you mind elaborating on that and just like why you've kind of focused on that as your niche and where that impact goes bigger outside of just helping them find their zone of genius?
Absolutely. And like a short answer is actually, it's a mixture of everything, Rob. And I just want to roll back a bit to the definition of the zone of genius. I usually put or add this definition from myself that it is a flow of living. And that what I mean with that is that if we just take this Mr. Hendricks definition, it's about getting into the flow. So finding activities in which you find the flow. And for me, it's so much bigger than that when you are in your zone of genius, that you have this flow of living and you manage to navigate the stormy seas of life. So whatever comes to you, you can get through that and you still feel flow of that. And I think it's important to emphasize that, to just not dilute the message and confuse people thinking that if I'm not enjoying one particular activity in my life or in my work, then I'm not in my zone of genius. No, it's not about that. It's about knowing that this is your purpose, having this total clarity about that part, and knowing that this is the price I need to pay. And even if it's the thing that you might not enjoy fully, you are happy to pay that price because you're intentional about it. So I think it's super important to add this to the conversation so that we don't think like, oh, I need to find this thing that I love doing 24/7 and I'm never unhappy with the thing that is in front of me today and to. No, it's not about that. Well, let's be realistic. It's about finding this inner compass and having it super well functioning so that it's easy for you to stay on track and have the strategies to actually come back to this track whenever something derails you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, entrepreneurship's hard. And we all think it's like beautiful, sexy, like you're running your own business, you do what you love. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that's true holistically. Like, I love what I do, but like there are days that suck. There are days that this shit's hard. There are days that I don't want to be doing something. There are days that I'm like, I can't. I don't want to. This, like, I hate it. Like, being an entrepreneur is hard. Being a business owner, running your own, business is hard. And there's things that you never think about, like accounting and payroll and taxes and all these things that you're like, wait a second, I did what? I have to do, huh? Those are the unsexy part of the businesses that people forget. And so when you live in this flow, in this zone, if you try to find a complete euphoria of loving everything that you do, you're never going to find it. Like, you can't feel joy if you haven't felt sorrow, right? Yes. Like, you need to have both experiences in life for you to appreciate those flows. And that's why I really appreciate you sharing that flow piece and kind of bringing that full circle. And I want to kind of bring back the point. You have a very specific niche and you want to create impact. So as you think about doing mind shifting, and this is a business, and you've talked a little bit about leaving corporate because you wanted to make a bigger impact. What is, what is the impact that Anna wants to make with the work that you do as a Mindshift coach?
So I'll answer both those questions, this one and the one that I ignored before, right? Or never kind of got to, regarding my ICP with the male leaders. When I was in the project management and the product development, I was doing a good job, but the vast majority of the job that really got the results for the team was about me getting the best out of my people. There was this one-to-one conversation somewhere in the corridor, or dragging them in the conference room because I see that they're not fine, or saying, grab your jacket, let's go out for a walk, and talking to people. or more listening to people, right? And this is what I want to bring in more. And why I want to do that with the leaders is because if I can transform or take the leaders who are like the top in the company and who are the root of the whole culture within the whole organization, if I can mind shift them, they bring this new perspective, new set of behaviors, new set of mindset or new mindset to their workplace. They transform the culture. So instead of me doing trainings with the whole like employees, and then all the employees are coming to the workplace and they want to work differently, but the leader then still behaves differently, sending those conflicting messages that confuse people and so on. I don't want to do that because I feel like this is not sustainable. That probably would give me a bigger back or whatever, but that's not how I create the real impact in the world. When I can transform those few people who everyone look at within their companies, this is what really creates this big change and really like makes the ripple effect so big. And why I do it with male leaders is because, okay, two parts of that. One is pragmatic, that most leaders, especially in the tech industry right now, are men still. And funnily enough, in the beginning of my Mindshifting journey, I actually wanted to support female leaders in tech because that's my background. I've been in those shoes. I know how challenging it is. But at the same time, I realized it's not about the female, like it's not about those women's mindset or something like that. It's about the environment that is not supportive. And that environment is created by the men. So for me to make a real difference in the work environment and really create the healthier cultures, I would need men to change. And I don't want that to be a way of like, oh yeah, Anna is there working with men so that they kind of make space for women to come in, so that men have to kind of lean back and take less space or something like this. No, it's not about that. It's about men also having the power to be them whole, instead of just being those alpha males who you need to be to become a leader. So for me, it's really about helping men to become the whole self and get empowered to bring their whole self to the workplace, that it becomes healthier for everyone. And a bit of a egoistic reason for that is that I work better with men. If we talk about the woo-woo stuff, but energetically, I connect better with men. It's easier for me. And that's why I want to work with men for my own sustainability, my personal sustainability.
So one thing that I really like about that, and I think that it's really interesting and awesome, is that you do have your awareness and understanding, and you set yourself up with your clientele that, one, you know how best you work, two, how best you can make an impact, and three, the downstream effect, right? Because you said it's not to be like, oh, I'm trying to change it from the inside out and be, pulling people apart. I know that there's a lot of leaders, especially male leaders in the industry, that don't bring their whole self to work. So if I can help them bring their whole self to work, that makes a bigger impact for the whole culture, the whole space. And then downstream effect, if your employees bring their whole self to work, they take their whole self back home with their families and friends, so on and so forth. And that's that ripple effect, right? That's the woo-woo stuff, but that ripple effect. And it's something I like to talk about, and I call it our sphere of impact, right? Is that, and I wrote my book, The Social Soul, about building our brands online, is that whether you have 50 people that follow you or 50,000, right? Somebody is watching you. Somebody wants to be where you are. Somebody is learning from you. And your sphere of impact continues to grow, right? And you get to make those things. And so you got to live within that, right? Like, I can't change the whole world, but by being a good human and doing the things I do and coaching amazing entrepreneurs in my ecosystem, I can help entrepreneurs make impact with their businesses, with their teams, the way they bring people in, the way they scale. And that has a bigger, like, long-term impact, right? And so you live within your sphere of impact and make that thing happen, because it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And that's, I love that that thought process. And I wanted to highlight that because that's something that I find is too many entrepreneurs out there, too many people try to serve everybody. And that's not possible. That's what burns you out. You need to have an understanding of who and why and how. So I wanted to highlight that because I think that's so important.
And I want to also emphasize here that sometimes you won't see those results down the stream.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is why tapping and being super clear on our purpose is so important. Because just being in this process, when you are completely like believing in what you do, it's so much easier to continue doing it, even though you don't have this like instant loop of feedback. And getting there, like, okay, here is the result. I know the transformation that I set my clients on, that path can take a couple of years for them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we see the results within 2-3 months, but the real effect of that will come down the road. And I'm happy and super grateful that most of my clients stay in touch with me. We're very good connection, and they just write those things to me randomly. Yeah. I'm not asking about that, but they, like months and years after we have worked together, they say, hey, Anna, there was this situation, and this is how I acted, and that's what I learned from you.
That's awesome.
So I do get it, but I need to stay like doing or like keep doing those things. And for that, I need to believe in why I'm doing them.
Yeah.
Because if we depend on that feedback, then we'll switch the strategies, we'll switch the jobs and so on, because we're just like, oh yeah, here I'm not getting this feedback, here I'm not getting like making this impact.
Yeah.
And we just become too impatient and switch too often, and that becomes unsustainable.
Yeah,
so absolutely. That's why, again, double down on your purpose.
I love that. I love that so much. That's a great takeaway. Double down on purpose. Mm-hmm. So as we're kicking 2022 off, right? And all of us can grow this year and have, whether we want to or not, we're going to have experiences that are going to shape and change our life. And what are some things, for Bear Nation at home, what are 1 or 2 things that they can do or kind of focus on as we talk about purpose and they're debating if they should be, where they want to invest their time and money on their personal and professional development. What are some of the things or some advice that you have for Bear Nation to kind of focus on in 2022 as they look to continue to define their zone of genius and find their flow?
Know yourself. Invest everything you can do, time, energy, and money into knowing yourself. And that doesn't have to cost you a lot of stuff, time, and a lot of money. You can start by really figuring out 5 minutes per day in your schedule to actually reflect. Sit down, slow down, and think, where am I? What occupies me? How do you feel right now? That is going to create massive effects on your productivity, on your business results, on your personal satisfaction from your life, everything. That is a game-changing habit. So I'm not going to give you more than that. Find the time and the ways for you to learn more about yourself. As I said, you can do it through journaling and reflecting every day. And this is something that all my clients have to do sooner or later. We'll get that with you, Rob, as well. But that is one of the ways, right? If you feel like you never prioritize that, that's why my clients come to me. They say it's so luxurious to have this 1 hour per week where I can just come and be super selfish, because they just have to take care of all the other people around themselves. Yeah. They have so many people's agendas on their table all the time, and they need to be so mindful of all of those. And coming to me and just talking about themselves for 1 hour, that's the space for them to grow. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, that's a great piece of advice for everybody as we go into the year. And it's really, it's simple and hard at the same time, because what fills up your cup changes over time. And that's also okay, as we've talked about throughout this podcast. Oh, awesome heavy stuff. Like, I love it. And it's again, it comes down to, and this is why I love, mind shifting. It's really the mindset that you take into the intentionality you take in every day, right? And the way you wake up and set intentions and building out
things, or as you call it, designing your day in a way that's going to maximize your potential. So,
and it's not about doing something like every minute of your awake time, right? It's about being super intentional. Like, okay, what are the biggest needle movers for me right now in this week, in this month, whatever time period we're taking? And then just taking 15 minutes per day, even that. But like committing to be 100% in that activity for those 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it changes everything.
Exactly. You know it, Rob, right? You've done a couple of those shifts in the recent time, and you know the effect of that.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is really the piece that people forget, is they think that every minute of every day has to be intentional, and it's not. It's wake up and do one intentional thing early in the day to set the course, because you have, energy, either negative or positive. And how you start that is what continues to exude all throughout the day. And those can change, but like if you start with that intention, doing one thing for 15 minutes, that just sets that whole rest of the day into a rhythm.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. And it's been super impactful for me. Anna, I know we're getting close to time, so I always like to end with a few questions for all my guests. One of them that I always love hearing people's answer to this is, what is your superpower?
Creating safe space, Rob, where people can say, I don't know, where people have the permission to explore and get to know themselves.
I love that. I think that's so important, and we don't have a lot of those spaces because we feel like, especially the clients you serve, and I work with entrepreneurs, the clients I serve, is that we have to know everything. And we are afraid to ask for help. And when you actually realize that you don't have to know everything, and that you take a step back and do ask for help, that's when the game changes and so much more opportunity will happen. So that's such a cool superpower, to allow safe space. So we've talked about books, but what's one book, show, resource that you would recommend right now?
Well, okay, if we talk about show, I'll promote my Genius Leadership podcast.
There we go.
But if we talk about books, I usually say pick whichever book that resonates with you and do the fucking job. It's so trendy now to like read one book per week, and like post all the like pictures of all the books that I've read and so on. Those like the higher the tag, the better. No, take 3 years to read one damn book. And actually live your life by that for 3 years.
Yeah.
So the most impactful book for me in my life was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it was because I committed to actually integrate what he was teaching into my life.
Yeah.
I read one habit at a time, and then I took time to implement it. And until I felt like this habit is part of how I live my life, I didn't go into the rest of the book. That's why it took me several years to read that book. I was so curious. I wanted to finish it, but I didn't. I had the discipline to actually stay in the chapter of that habit. And that's what made it so powerful for me. So it's not about my recommendation of Covey's book. It's my recommendation of doing the fucking job.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, I consume just tons of content, and I love consuming tons of content. And at the expense of, when I have a great book and great content, I implement that. But sometimes it's just consuming it. But one of the books that I read recently that has been impactful is Essentialism. And for me, having ADHD and a little bit of OCD, everything feels haywire. It's given me some really good tips and tricks to kind of focus on one thing at a time. So I love kind of your idea of doing a job, like taking the book and implementing it in your life. If you're going to read something, especially if it's like a personal development book like that, take time to action it, implement it, and then keep that continuous feedback loop. I mean, just consume content. You learn a lot, but if you're not doing anything with it, then it just kind of becomes content that you're consuming, and you read and you look cool, but are you actually learning anything from it? Which is the trendy thing to do, right?
And the thing is that I'll just quickly call people out on that even more, or explain a bit more. I feel like we are so stressed because we know so much and we do so little out of that. Yeah. So if you turn it around, that you know little, but you actually do all of that, that boosts your self-confidence instead of thinking, how hard can it be? I read 10 books on that. They all talk about the same stuff. Why can't I live by that?
Yeah.
That's the power. That's you taking your power back. And instead of thinking like, ooh, I know all this stuff. Like, why am I not living by that? Live by that.
I love that. Well, I think also too is we consume content and like, oh, this should be easy, and then when it's hard, it's like, well, they were wrong, so let me go consume other content in another easy way, and it's always an easy fix versus like, where do we learn and implement things in our lives? So I love that and it kind of leads me into the next question of what advice would you give somebody out there that's looking to be or wants to be an entrepreneur, that's Gen Z, millennial, later in life, like anyone out there. If they're looking to start their own business, what advice would you give them?
Really take time to learn about yourself on a depth level and create the time in your schedule to do this reflection. There are like hundreds of different questions that you can answer. Just Google and pick up several. And I have the foundation of my questions, but they have changed. Sometimes I add some extra questions. Sometimes I tweak some question depending on where in my personal development journey I am. But that's the thing. When I've done my homework, it's so much easier for me to show up for my clients. For you as a leader, it's so much easier to show up for your people for real and be the good leader for them because you've done your homework. So do your homework.
Love it. That is a great way to end the show. Anna, thank you so much. For those out there in Bear Nation, I will drop a link in the show notes to Anna's podcast, the Genius Leadership Podcast. It's a great one. She has amazing guests. I was on it at one point, so that gives you maybe an idea of the quality. But I've loved tuning in and learning a lot from the way that she brings guests on and the conversations. So take a look at that. Anna, where can my listeners find you? How can I get in touch if they want to learn more about what you're doing, getting involved, or just having a chat?
So I'm most present on LinkedIn. That's my favorite playground nowadays. So you find me there on the daily, and drop me a line, connect with me, and ask follow-up questions. What resonated with you, where you felt some kind of resistance, and if you don't agree with me, I'm more than happy to hear from you.
Love it. Well, I will also make sure to drop her LinkedIn link in the chat in the show notes as well. Anna, thank you so much for being on and spend this time with me. I hope you and your family have a wonderful and happy, healthy New Year to Bear Nation. Hope you all have a happy and healthy New Year as well.
I appreciate you, Rob. Thank you.
Until next time, Bear Nation, stay well. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Bear Necessities podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review. It really does help and means a lot to us, the show. And I want to thank our friends over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. It's our mission to support and give back to the communities that we serve around the world. And we do this by giving every guest on our show a $10 donation to the cause of their choosing using the Fin platform. Until next time, thank y'all, stay well, and rise up.